They beat San Antonio Monday night 125-109. 30 points for Austin Reeves. Luka Doncic had 21 points and 14 assists. LeBron has been working out the past 3 days, but no word yet on his return. LeBron has been out since March 8th with a groin injury. Interesting game for the Clippers tonight. They play the Cleveland Cavaliers at the Intuit Dome in Inglewood. The Cavs have the NBA's best record at 56-11. This is a busy time and a fun experience for Norfolk State Athletics Director Melody Webb. The Norfolk State men and women's basketball teams are in the NCAA tournament. Webb was hired at the HBCU school on July 1st, 2020. She's the first female athletics director at Norfolk State in school history. The men's team plays Florida on Friday.
He's empowering tomorrow's leaders and changing lives. Parkside EDC has awarded over $400,000 in college scholarships while sharing economic principles of the Big Five of money with students and their families. Parkside EDC partners with organizations like the Brotherhood Crusade to assure our youth have the financial acumen to succeed. Parkside EDC provides families and businesses with financial insights, offering free online, on-site, and on-air B-Warp presentations. The Black Wealth Attainment and Retention Programs helps our community acquire, sustain, and pass down legacy wealth. High school seniors can apply for this year's scholarship awards at parksideedc.org. Scholarships will be awarded at Parkside EDC's Gospel/Jazz Brunch on Sunday, April the 27th. For details, tickets, or donations, please visit parksideedc.org. This is a community call to action from KBLA Talk 1580.
Tavis, Smiley. Delighted to have you with us in this third hour of our program, third and final hour. And what a show it has been. I was just saying to our guest who's in studio, introduce her in just a second. She asked me, how are you today? I said, well, I made it to the last hour. This program has moved with speed today. Every 2 seconds, it seems there was some breaking news. It's been quite the day, but we made it to this third hour, and I'll be looking forward to this conversation. In this hour, social justice advocate and community organizer Vanessa Priya Daniel joins us live in studio to discuss her new text, Unrig the Game, What Women of Color Can Teach Everyone About Winning. We were talking this hour about women in leadership and how that can lead to lasting change. This is, of course, March, which is Women's History Month, so the timing for this conversation couldn't be more propitious. And yet, this is the kind of stuff we ought to be talking about even outside of the month of March. And so I'm delighted, again, to have Vanessa Priya Daniel in studio. How are you today?
Doing well. Thanks so much for having me.
It's my great delight to have you. Let me start our conversation with this. I want to just frame this properly, then I'll let you run free for the rest of the hour here. In the U.S., many of the most significant social justice victories of our time have been spearheaded by women of color leaders, from the streets to the ballot box to elected office. No other demographic group, that is, stands up more consistently and unequivocally for human rights, democracy, and the planet. Remarkably, they've accomplished this despite conditions in their fields and organizations that make leadership uniquely treacherous for them. For women of color leaders, the game is rigged. How much more could humanity be winning if we unrigged? What might be possible if in this clutch moment of history, with so much on the line, if movements stopped benching our best in ways that negatively impact the scoreboard for everybody? I thought I'd read that, Vanessa, as a way to just frame the conversation. There are some legitimate questions, some provocative questions, some deep questions posed in that particular paragraph that I read, again, setting up the frame for this conversation. So the book, again, is called Unrig the Game, What Women of Color Can Teach Everyone About Winning. I'm always fascinated, Vanessa, about the backstory of how people come to moments like these in the writing of books. Clearly, your backstory plays a role here. So tell me how this book ends up becoming a book.
Yeah, well, I have been working in movements for almost 30 years. I started out as a community and a labor organizer, and then I funded over 100 organizations that were led by women of color, grassroots organizing shops. And I wrote this book as a call to radically shift how we see and treat women of color leaders in movement. And I wrote it because I want us and I want movements to win. I have two daughters. They're 6 and 13. I want them to have things like self-determination over their bodies, like a democracy to live in and a planet to live on. And I'm just very clear that they're not going to have those things if progressive movements don't start winning more of the time. And, we are in the fight of our lives right now against fascism. We need our full strength. So much of that strength comes from our best and brightest leaders in movement. And so many of those leaders are women of color. And we know that women of color, and Black women in particular, have been leaders throughout the history of movements in this country, have been the backbone of movements. And yet we've never had a conversation in the public square about how much more we could all be winning if we really valued the strategic brilliance they're bringing and if we stopped benching them. So this book is cracking open that conversation. It draws on interviews that I did with over 45 prominent leaders that I have known throughout my time in movement, mostly frontline organizers, also some elected officials from every different sector of movement. And it was just a privilege to sit down with people, some of whom I've known for 15, 20, 25 years, who I knew would have a lot of the answers for how to unrig these positions, and who also trusted me enough to level with me about their experiences. So, sitting down with Dolores Huerta, sitting down with my mentor, Disa Douglas, and her late partner, the great Dr. Bernice Johnson-Reagan, sitting down with Representative Pramila Jayapal, national leaders like Latasha Brown, Ashley Woodard Henderson. It's just been a masterclass. So I have tried to bring that through in the book and share that with folks, because we really need, this is a moment where we really need to be unfettered and we need to be able to use our full strength. So this is actually an intervention that we can make now that is not an addendum to what's happening at the moment in this country. It's an imperative to it, to be able to actually it's to reinfuse and re-energize our movements at a time when we need it.
You ran a stellar list of persons that you've interviewed for this book. I've had the honor of interviewing every one of those persons you just mentioned over the course of my career. And in fact, that's why I put my phone out to look at it, and I wasn't ignoring you. In fact, Ashley Woodard Henderson is our lead guest tomorrow on this program.
Oh, beautiful.
So Ashley, I love her as well. She's our lead guest on tomorrow's program, so I had to pull up my phone again to just look at my schedule for tomorrow. So we will see Ashley tomorrow in our first hour. So the book is called Unrig the Game, What Women of Color Can Teach Everyone About Women. Vanessa said a lot just already, and she's made it easy for me to know where to take this conversation. And the question I want to pose the minute we come forward To your point about treating women of color leaders differently, the obvious question is, how are we treating them?
Yes.
Or how are we maltreating them?
Yes.
That's where we'll start when we
Okay.
come forward with Vanessa Priya Daniel discussing her new book, Unrig the Game, What Women of Color Can Teach Everyone About Winning. You're listening to her, and I'm glad about it, on Tavis Smiley.
From California to the Carolinas, everybody's listening to Tavis. More when we come forward.
Robinhood Gold members can now enjoy the VIP treatment, receiving a 3% IRA match on annual retirement contributions. With Robinhood Gold, the perks of the high net worth are now available for any net worth. The new gold standard is here with Robinhood Gold. To receive a 3% boost on annual IRA contributions, sign up at Robinhood.com/gold.
Investing involves risk. 3% match requires Robinhood Gold $5 a month for 1 year from first match. Must keep funds in IRA for 5 years. Go to Robinhood.com/boost. Robinhood Financial LLC member SIPC. Gold membership is offered by Robinhood Gold LLC.
Make a move into a home of your own. With City National Bank's Ladder Up Home Loan Grant, you could receive up to $20,000 that you never need to pay back. Use it toward your down payment, save on closing costs, or to buy down your mortgage rate. Find out more at cnb.com/ladderuphome. City National, here for every stage of the journey. Property must be in a qualifying market in California, New York, or New Jersey. Additional terms and conditions apply. Not all applicants will qualify. Terms are subject to change without notice. City National Bank is an equal housing lender. Member FDIC. NMLS number 536994.
If you're living with dry age-related macular degeneration or dry AMD, you may be at risk for developing geographic atrophy or GA. GA can be unpredictable and progress rapidly, leading to irreversible vision loss. Now there's something you can do to
Slow it down and get it going slower.
Izervay is proven to slow GA progression.
Izervay gets GA going slower.
Izervay or avacincaptad pagel is a prescription eye injection used to treat GA. Don't take it if you have an infection or active swelling in or around your eye. Izervay can cause eye infection, retinal detachment, or increased risk of wet AMD. Izervay may temporarily increase eye pressure. Your vision may be impaired after an eye injection or exam. Don't delay. Ask your doctor about Izervay today.
Izervay gets GA going slower.
Visit Izervay.com. That's IZERVAY.com.
As a rideshare driver, I love keeping my car smelling fresh and clean. So when I'm driving, I only trust Febreze car vent clips, featuring 3 distinct intensity settings, because it's that little touch that sets me apart. I can turn the intensity down for subtle freshness, or I can turn it up for when I want lots of scent. So whether it's set to low, medium, or high, with Febreze car, I know my car's going to smell amazing. Which keeps my driver rating right where it belongs. Picking up, Oscar!
Sometimes I struggle to get to sleep. My body stopped for the day, but my mind is still running. So I take ZQuil.
ZQuil, the world's #1 sleep aid brand, has a range of non-habit-forming products to fit you and your family's needs. Invest in a great night's sleep for the best you tomorrow.
I'm awake and ready to take on anything.
Better days start with ZQuil nights. Explore our products at ZQuil.com. Use as directed. Keep out of reach of children.
Sometimes he fails at fitting in, but we're okay with that. You're inside the Tavis Smiley Show.
You are indeed with Vanessa Priya Daniel, author of the new book, Unrig the Game, What Women of Color Can Teach Everyone About Winning. You made the point earlier. I'm going to follow you, as I do with all of my guests through the rest of this hour. So the obvious question to my mind is, how are we treating or maltreating, as it were, women of color in leadership positions?
Yes. Well, we've seen over the last 25 years the largest ascension of women of color into the top leadership positions of movement organizations in the history of this country. The challenge is, and there's so many superpowers we've seen these sisters bring, so many victories, and we've also seen the kind of battering that has taken place. And if we wonder why, given the level of talent and excellence that so many of them are bringing, that we're seeing this occurring, we can just look at what happened to Joy-Ann Reid. And we can remember what Bell Hooks taught us, that sometimes people destroy you precisely because they recognize your power, not because they don't see it, but because they see it and they don't want it to exist. So what makes it difficult? I think that even though we've seen this ascension, we were really welcomed into leadership kind of like Jackie Robinson was welcomed into the majors. We were treated differently from our white and male counterparts from the start, and that different treatment wasn't just coming from the right wing. It was also coming from within our own movements. It was coming from within our own organizations. You mentioned Ashley Woodard Henderson, who's a friend of mine. The way she describes it is the sensation of trying to fly a plane while being shot at from the outside and the inside at the same time. And there's a lot of things.
That's quite a metaphor.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, and it was echoed across the interviews that I did. Now, there's a lot of things that make it feel like that, and in the book I have something called the job description, which is a very detailed list, and it is the subtext of what women of color are expected to do and put up with in leadership positions. But I'll just talk today about the top 5, and these were the most universal, because I also have a section in the book called We Are Not a Monolith, which really talks about how what benches Black women is often different from what benches Asian women and Latinas and so on and so forth. So we are not the same, and people don't come for our necks in the same ways. But the top 5 that were mentioned the most in the interviews and the most universal, number 1 is the invitation onto a glass cliff, so to lead an organization in crisis. Number 2 is the assumption of incompetence. Number 3 is the expectation to mother and mammy. Number 4 is being given zero margin for error. And then number 5 is when you're attacked, you're abandoned. So let me explain a little bit what those look like.
Sure.
So the invitation onto a glass cliff looks like a leader I talked to right here in California. She was offered a CEO position. A few weeks into the job, controller comes into her office, says there's not enough money in the bank to make payroll at the end of the month. No one had told her about this before she took the job. So she works round the clock for months, weathering her own health in the process to rectify the situation, knowing that more than any other leader, even though she didn't create this problem, she is going to be the one who's blamed for it. So that glass cliff is you either work your Black or brown girl magic or you take the fall for someone else's mess. It also, by the way, looks like Kamala Harris being invited to mount a campaign with less time than any other candidate. Assumption of incompetence looks like the demand that you work 4 times as hard to be seen as half as credible, and the way that weathers our minds, bodies, and spirits. And there's an excellent organizer out in Chicago, Amisha Patel, excellent leader who I spoke with, and her story was that she battled cancer. During her first battle with cancer, she worked through chemo and radiation. So she was in a bathroom stall outside of a work meeting in New York when her hair started to fall out. She knew it was coming, but she didn't feel like she could slow down. And over again, I heard this, just the overwork, the over-efforting, not feeling like you can slow down, you can take adequate amount of vacation, and how that manifests in health problems. The expectation to mother and mammy. So there was no issue that I talked to folks about that was a bigger pain point or lightning rod than this one. And this is being cast as mean or aggressive for normal levels of assertiveness that would be accepted from any other leader. It's being cast as cold or unfeeling anytime you say no. It is the expectation not just that you deliver a workplace that is fair and sustainable, where people have a voice on the job, but one that is a utopia where no one ever feels a trigger or a discomfort. And then the punishment that's meted out in the public square oftentimes when you don't deliver on that impossibility. It also looks like the demand that you perform a kind of vulnerability so that people feel less uncomfortable with the specter of a woman of color standing in her full power. One of the leaders I talked to out of the reproductive justice movement told me she left leadership altogether. This was like a very prominent national leader, left leadership altogether because her staff kept clamoring for her to be more vulnerable. So her annual reviews were filled with things that said, comments that were, she's visionary, she is excellent at fundraising, her strategy is solid, but you know what, she never cries. So it wasn't enough that she was doing her job. People needed her to get emotionally naked for them to feel comfortable with her. I've talked to a Native sister who said she runs everything by her husband, who's a Native man. They both work with nonprofits to serve the Native community. She will run an email by him when it's a delicate situation. He'll say, yep, it's fine, very even toned, exactly how I would put it. She sends it out, huge blowback. So this expectation of mother and mammy drains our time. It's a distraction. Zero margin for error. We saw what happened to Claudine Gay. Error doesn't need to be real. It could just be perceived.
Claudine Gay at Harvard, of course.
At Harvard,
yeah,
absolutely.
Sure.
And then the abandonment when attacked, we saw what happened to the initial leaders of the Women's March. There were 4 of them, but only the 3 who were women of color were targeted by the NRA for attack ads that incited people to threaten their lives. And then they were dragged all over the internet behind these false accusations and rumors. And when they reached for folks in movement, people wouldn't return their calls. They said people treated us like we were radioactive or guilty or hysterical. And come to find out a year later, the New York Times breaks the story that, in fact, it was Russian bots that were behind all that trolling, trying to cleave the women's movement. So this piece of the abandonment when attacked, the painfulness of the stories that I heard over and over again, you know, I kept thinking of this quote by this feminist, Carolyn Jess Cook, who says, why were we taught to fear the witches instead of the people who burn them alive? So these are some of the things that are benching us and that we need to begin to break the silence around, because there's been a lot of silence around them, so that we can unrig the game and these leaders cannot have this on their neck anymore.
I didn't want to interrupt because I wanted you to lay that foundation, and you laid it quite nicely. Thank you for that. Let me now start my interrogation, if you will. Let me play devil's advocate on a couple of things, because I know it's going to bring out the best part of this book.
Yes.
I start with Joyanne Reed because I want to know what you saw, because you used her as a reference point.
Yeah.
I've been at this game for 30-plus years in the media. We all have moments where we are hired and fired. It's always the network's choice who they keep and who they pass on to bring somebody else in. It's always their choice about how they decide who will be their host. So one could argue that it's a network decision. Clearly, you saw it as more than just a network decision. What did you see? Because you used Joyanne Reed as an example.
Yeah. What I saw was a sister who is an MVP of network news. I see a professional who is a gold standard of excellence and integrity and truth-telling, and lifting up the voices of communities that are the most vulnerable and marginalized, who are often sidelined from being able to have a platform. I saw a sister who exemplified what it is to have backbone and courage. And I think that we are in an environment where we are seeing a backlash on all of those things. And I think that it's precisely because of her excellence that she was taken out. And that's what I saw. I mean, I talk a lot about the 3 superpowers that many women of color exhibit, and I think Joyanne Reed is an example of these as well, but we see these across movement. That, number 1 is 360-degree vision, which is the term I use for kind of the organizing and the praxis of approaching problems in a way that tackles forces of white supremacy, misogyny, extractive capitalism, colonialism simultaneously, not one by one, that really gets at those interlocking forces of things that are hurting all of us. Of course, we know Kimberly Crenshaw talked about it, the experience of being on the receiving end of these forces as intersectionality. We know the Combahee River Collective talked about it. Cherie Moraga wrote about it. This has been a part of the lexicon and the understanding of women of color, feminists for a really long time. The second superpower is boldness, and this is absolutely see it in the work of Joyanne Reed, but also we see it in the squad as the left flank of Congress. But the conviction to fight for the fullness of what our communities need to thrive, of what the planet needs to be livable. And when we look at, the fires that LA just experienced here, when we look at something like the Green New Deal, which was one of the most courageous pushes to address climate change, it was Rihanna Gunn-Wright, a black woman, who wrote it. It was AOC, a Latina, who was its first champion in Congress. Varshini Prakash, a South Asian woman, galvanized youth in the Sunrise Movement at the grassroots to push for it. And then when it stalled out, it was Representative Pramila Jayapal, as the head of the Congressional Progressive Caucus, who locked arms with women of color at the grassroots and in Congress to make sure that key elements of it made it into the Inflation Reduction Act. So that we know that now the largest outlay of resources that we see in this country to address climate change includes serious dollars for the most vulnerable communities, which is absolutely critical to cities like LA with what people have just gone through now. Which I don't know about you, but I have like several friends who have lost homes.
Yeah,
we all know people who have lost homes.
Mm-hmm.
So that kind of boldness is absolutely possible. And then the last superpower is generosity. So this is the ability to fight in a way that doesn't throw any groups under the bus in order to win. It is that determination to say we're not leaving immigrants or our trans kids or pregnant people or any group behind in order to win, and it is that, that kind of generosity, it jams the gears of divide and conquer that fascism relies on in order to advance. Just as boldness, that conviction to really fight in a bold way is like an antidote to this affliction of timidity that fascists are relying on to get all of us to obey in advance. So these are critical to the moment. It is critical to have voices that are bringing these, like Joanne Reed's, on air and in various places in our movement and in our in the public square discussion. And we're going to fight right now to keep them there.
Again, playing devil's advocate here.
Sure.
Again, you raised Joanne Reed. I want to come back to it one final time. You raised Kamala Harris as well. And this question will cover both, I think. There is a line, I think you'll agree, or there can be a line, between performance and racism, which is to say that if you are not performing and you get canned, then we shouldn't default to racism. We shouldn't default to gender.
Agreed.
As we discuss your book. So that, and I don't care to get into Joanne Reed's past. My point is, I know Joanne Reed, and we've all followed this story. There were a number of times that she got MSNBC in some trouble. Things she said, things she posted. She had to back down on this. She had to apologize for this. Joanne got MSNBC in some trouble over a period of time. One could read that as MSNBC being concerned about her, performance in broad terms, in quotes, not necessarily because she's a black woman. The same could be said of Kamala Harris. Kamala Harris was given the baton. Joe Biden didn't have to do that. She raised over $1 billion. Yes, she had a short runway, but many have argued that short runway was ultimately good for her because had she been out there a year or two earlier, then all this stuff might have been exposed sooner. If she'd competed with other people, she wouldn't have raised $1 billion because nobody raises $1 billion when you compete against other people for the nomination, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. You take my point. When we come forward, I just want to hear your take on where or how you see that line between performance and race or performance and gender. We'll let Vanessa, Priya, Danielle respond to that and a great deal more as we come forward discussing her book, Unrig the Game, What Women of Color Can Teach Everyone About Winning. You're listening to her right now on Tavis Smiley.
This is getting good. Yeah, man. Tavis Smiley continues when we come forward.
Progressive's Auto Quote Explorer lets you easily compare direct rates from different insurance companies, so you can be confident you're getting the right one, even if it's not with Progressive. Way more confident than you were when you tried online gaming. Who knew 12-year-old boys could be so mean? And where did they learn to swear like that? 2 hours of losing to these underage trash talkers, and you're starting to question if maybe you really should stick to pickleball and other boomer stuff. So use Progressive's Auto Quote Explorer and be confident you're getting insurance that's right for you. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Not available in all states or situations. Prices vary based on how you buy.
I'm Bree Wood with 4 Things You Should Know with BIN News. The parents of missing University of Pittsburgh student Sudiksha Konanki have asked Dominican authorities to declare her dead. Konanki disappeared on March 6th in Punta Cana. Her family notes the American man she was last seen with has cooperated with investigators, and there are no signs of foul play. D.C.'s Black Mayor Muriel Bowser supports President Trump's efforts to keep the FBI headquarters in D.C. instead of moving to Greenbelt, Maryland. Trump wants the FBI and DOJ close together, but the final location is undecided. A new report shows violent crimes in Los Angeles decreased in 2024. Black Mayor Karen Bass highlighted a 14% drop in homicides along with reductions in aggravated assault and robberies. And FX has ordered a pilot for a Snowfall spinoff starring Gail Bean and Isaiah John. Set in the 90s, the show will follow Wanda, a recovering addict, as she navigates gang wars and aims to bring West Coast rap mainstream. Get BIN News on demand 24/7 on the iHeartRadio app.
Think It Up is an initiative to activate student-powered, teacher-led learning projects. Students and teachers, how can you spark great learning experiences in your classrooms today? Join at thinkitup.org.
Is this the dagger? This is the KBLA Sports Minute with Ray Richardson.
The Lakers continue to get it done without LeBron. They beat San Antonio Monday night 125-109. 30 points for Austin Reeves. Luka Doncic had 21 points and 14 assists. LeBron has been working out the past 3 days, but no word yet on his return. LeBron has been out since March 8th with a groin injury. Interesting game for the Clippers tonight. They play the Cleveland Cavaliers at the Intuit Dome in Inglewood. The Cavs have the NBA's best record at 56-11. This is a busy time and a fun experience for Norfolk State Athletics Director Melody Webb. The Norfolk State men and women's basketball teams are in the NCAA tournament. Webb was hired at the HBCU school on July 1st, 2020. She's the first female athletics director at Norfolk State in school history. The men's team plays Florida on Friday. The women's team faces Maryland Saturday. No debates, no speculation, just the info you need. That's your KBLA Sports Minute. I'm Ray Richardson. More news, opinions, and conversation when we come forward on KBLA Talk 1580.
We've got a lot to talk about.
I'm Reverend Gerald, the life coach. Is someone you love struggling with addiction and mental illness? Is improving your family's health important? Want to leave a legacy that your family can grow? Are you ready to enhance your perception of life experiences? Then wake up weekends at 7 a.m. with Urban Family Focus and get the wisdom, opportunity, resources, and motivation to live your best life. Join the conversation on Urban Family Focus Saturday and Sunday at 7 a.m.
Unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580. We've got your black. This is KBLA Talk 1580. Talk radio. That's music to your ears. We're unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580.
The Crohn's and Colitis Foundation has been at the forefront of inflammatory bowel disease research and care for over 50 years. Learn more about research, education, and support at Crohn'sColitisFoundation.org.
My mom has decided to learn to paint, and she's good.
My dad's now into creative cuisine, and I've already put on 6 pounds.
Learning new things comes with age.
My mom, she started forgetting my name and what we're talking about.
Forgetting well-known things doesn't. Memory loss may be a sign of Alzheimer's disease. Early detection gives you and your loved one time to plan for the future. Learn the warning signs of Alzheimer's at 10signs.org. Brought to you by the Alzheimer's Association and the Ad Council.
Paid for by government.com. Did you know the United States Mint has issued a new Morgan silver dollar coin in proof condition for the first time? Not only that, they are also minted in 99.9% pure silver for the first time ever in history. Coin experts are calling this an amazing opportunity for anyone that knows the enduring popularity of Morgans. But you must hurry. Only 400,000 of these legal tender silver dollars were issued. These first ever Morgan silver dollars are brand new with stunning mirror-like finish, minted by the iconic San Francisco Mint. Call now and you're guaranteed a new first ever 99.9% pure silver proof Morgan dollar. To learn more, call 1-800-973-9717. If you order now, you will receive a free coin collector bonus pack, a $25 value, free with every order. Call 1-800-973-9717 now to secure your new Morgan silver dollars before they are gone. That's 1-800-973-9717.
Stories are power. The Black Land Lost Narrative Archive Project is an effort to collect, preserve, and amplify stories of Black land loss. It will form an invaluable resource for scholars, authors, historians, educators, storytellers, policymakers, and change agents who wrestle with issues of restitution, reparations, racial inequality in home ownership, and the racial wealth gap. Through documenting stories of Black land loss, the archive will help demonstrate the magnitude of what Black families have lost and will continue the national dialogue to encourage paths to restitution, rebuilding, and healing. Support the Black Land Lost Narrative Archive Project by visiting www.blacklandlost.org or by donating at www.blacklandlost.org/donate. Spread the word to inspire awareness, activism, leadership, and change. and join us in making a lasting impact. This is a community call to action from KBLA Talk 1580. We've got your black.
He's a paradigm pioneer and the top-rated African-American talk show host in the nation, according to Talkers Magazine. You're tapped in with Tavis Smiley right now.
You are indeed Tavis Smiley and Vanessa Priya Danielle. Her book is called Unrig the Game, What Women of Color Can Teach Everyone About Winning. It's a spirited and fascinating conversation, and I was just saying to Vanessa during the break, I'm always checking my socials, and I see y'all talking, I see you listening, I see the commentary. So we have struck a nerve with this conversation, and apparently my last question that I teased before we went to break has struck a nerve, and I'll just quote from one of our listeners, which is really what I was getting at. Tavis, great frame to that last question. Is there ever an accountability and teaching moment for women of color?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Take it away, Vanessa.
I think absolutely, because that is also part of our humanity. You negate people's humanity if you valorize them based on identity as an essentialist quality. Mm-hmm. Accountability, if you have humanity, accountability belongs to everybody. And so when we say that women of color, for example, in movement have many of us have these superpowers of ways of tackling social change. Those qualities aren't inherent, right? Not every woman of color who's a leader has them, because Nikki Haley, Candace Owens, and certainly plenty of leaders that would identify as progressive that may be unethical as managers or not be competent at the job. And at the same time, not every leader who's not a woman of color lacks them. So, but we do see that they are disproportionately present. Tavis, before the break, you brought up Kamala Harris as an example, and I think that we can look at how that campaign went and understand that by point of comparison, for example, when Barack Obama was hit with white supremacy, with all of this birtherism stuff, and Hillary Clinton was hit with a lot of misogyny, Kamala Harris was certainly hit with both. She was called both the DEI candidate. She was addressed with terms like Jezebel. So there's no question in my mind that that combination of forces had an impact on the outcome of the election. And there's no question in my mind that had people, both liberals and progressives alike, including the Democratic Party, done more to dismantle instead of ignore forces of white supremacy and patriarchy. And I can say that as someone who worked in the reproductive justice movement for nearly 20 years, and understanding that, even issues like abortion and a lot of gender-based issues were treated as the political third rail or the poison pill that no Democrat wanted to touch. So, white supremacy didn't even fully start to be addressed until after the largest protest movement in the history of this country following the murder of George Floyd. So, this is a part of it. I will say that when we look at what happened in the election and the Democratic Party writ large, we have to understand that the American people are in pain. They're in pain economically. They're in pain from climate disasters. They want, as AOC points out, brawlers for working families. They do not want a party whose brand is sitting down at a welcome tea for white supremacists to usher them into the White House, because that's the way it's always been done. Now, if you look within the Democratic Party, a lot of the brawlers, a lot of the folks who are the serious fighters for working people are folks like the Squad, are women of color, are the AOCs, are the Ilhan Omars.
No question.
And that is why you also see people voting. These split votes happen where you see people voting in majorities for candidates like AOC, or even for issues like abortion access, LGBT rights, living wage initiatives, and investing in those kind of candidates and those kind of stances that they feel like reflect a fight, but then divesting from the Democratic Party brand because they feel that it is divested from them. And I don't think that people are wrong about that. If we look at what's happening with Schumer, if we look like the spinelessness that we are seeing from Newsom in this moment. So, I think in many ways, the ability of any candidate at the top of the ticket to fully express that fight, whether or not it's in their heart. And we know that Kamala Harris has a record of fighting for our communities and many other positions, I think is limited by the constraints of that. So, I think we need to look at that. But absolutely, to the original question, there needs to be a look at what is the difference between people who are qualified and who are doing the job and actually being discriminated against and facing benching that is unfair, and then folks who are not doing the job and or abusing power.
See, I think therein lies the rub.
Yes.
Because I don't know that everyday people can make the distinction between the two. Particularly and especially when somebody gets benched, to use your phrase, I love that phrase, when a woman gets benched, if it's always that I got benched because of my race, if it's always I got benched because of my gender, we're back to the accountability question, and I take your point that not every male leader is a great leader.
Yes.
Not every female leader is a great leader.
Yes.
I get that part. But I don't know how you draw that line of distinction.
Yes.
If every time a woman gets benched, it's because of her race or her gender. Does that make sense?
It absolutely makes sense. And my answer to that is that you do it by looking at evidence and facts.
Okay.
And this is part of the challenge of the times we're living in, is we're living in a time where we have allowed this kind of crusading on behalf of people without discernment. And this sort of mob mentality where we're not looking at facts, even on the progressive side, where we will not really unpack what is the evidence behind something. And we need to look at that, because if we don't truly look at facts, if every time someone says I'm discriminated against, then we are just crusading on their behalf without truly unpacking it. Then what makes us different from QAnon? What makes us the followers of QAnon? What makes us different from, folks who are blaming their, white folks in rural America who are blaming their pain, their economic pain, on immigrants and trans folks.
Let me push back on Kamala, because I raised it, you raised it, we both raised it. Let me come back another way. This occurs to me as you're talking.
Sure.
As I said a moment ago, if every time a woman gets benched or loses or doesn't measure up, it's about her race or her gender, that's problematic on a certain level, as we've already discussed. But to Kamala specifically, when people cast Donald Trump as having blown her out the water, you and I both know that wasn't true.
Yes.
If 150,000 votes, The Nation magazine did the best work on this. If 150,000 votes had swung the other way in just 3 swing states, Kamala would be president right now. 150,000 votes in just 3 swing states. You see where I'm going now, right? It is hard to argue that her race and her gender are the reason why she didn't get elected when it was that close. This really is one of the closest elections in the history of this country. 150,000 votes in 3 swing states, and she raised over $1 billion. You see, that's my point. That I'm not so sure that argument will work for most people, that her race and her gender held her back, unless you're saying it held her back with 150,000 people in those 3 swing states.
What I'm saying is that there's a number of variables that held her back. And that's why I made the point I did about the Democratic Party brand.
Yep.
I think that brand holds anyone back at the top of the ticket when that brand is standing for something that does not look to the average American person like backbone.
But in that case, though, it's not just black women who suffer. All of us are suffering in that regard. The Palestinians are suffering in that regard right now for that very reason. I could run the long list of people who are suffering right now because the Democratic Party can't get its act together.
Oh, absolutely.
So if Kamala's victimized by that, so a lot of other people are being victimized by that as well. I digress for now. This is getting good. More with Vanessa Priya Danielle. Her book is called Unrig the Game, What Women of Color Can Teach Everyone About Winning. You're listening to Tavis Smiley.
Generous listening. Charitable listening. It's why everybody wants to talk to Tavis. The conversation continues when we come forward.
Joe Montana here. In my football days, I knew the importance of a strong defense. Now I'm sharing how you can help defend your health against pneumococcal pneumonia and invasive pneumococcal disease. Are you 50 or older like me? The CDC now recommends vaccination against pneumococcal disease. Even if you're healthy, your age puts you at increased risk and over 6 times greater risk of hospitalization with pneumococcal pneumonia than adults under 50. Schedule your appointment today at vaxassist.com.
Sponsored by Pfizer.
We ask seniors how to prevent Medicare scams.
My best advice, if you get a phone call, do not talk to the person. These people are well trained. Don't talk to them.
They don't know me. They're just trying to scam me.
Don't be fooled. Hang up.
Just hang up.
Never give out your Medicare number.
They're going to get your number to put in a false claim.
If I get a call from someone, I don't pick up the phone, and should I pick up the phone and they ask for information, then I hang up.
How do you detect Medicare fraud?
Just like I check my credit card statements, I check my Medicare statements monthly.
Scammers can get a hold of your number, order medical devices through your account, and you're not even going to know about it if you don't look at your statement.
Check your statement every month.
If you get your statement and you see something that you know you did not have done, you report it.
Call your Senior Medicare Patrol.
To report Medicare fraud, call the Senior Medicare Patrol at 855-613-7080.
The revolution will not be televised.
What's up? It is Killer Mike, also known as Michael Render, and I'm encouraging you to listen to more, not less, of Truth Time with Dr. Cornel West and Senator Nina Turner on KBLA Talk 1580.
KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
KBLA Talk 1580, connecting you with services and solutions. If you need help getting your resume in order, finding job training, or landing a job, we've got 3 great options for you. First, the City of Los Angeles has WorkSource centers across the area offering free job support. The California Workforce Development Board can help you with everything from GED prep to vocational training at no cost to you. On the federal level, the Department of Labor's American Job Centers offer a full range of services for job seekers and businesses alike. Visit careeronestop.org, or for more info, just call California's Help Center or visit cwdb.ca.gov or call 916-657-1440. For the City of Los Angeles programs, go to ewdd.lacity.gov or call 213-744-7300. All these services are free to help you get your next job. This is a community call to action from KBLA Talk 1580.
Freedom is an endless meeting. So let's get back to it with Tavis Smiley.
Tavis Smiley and Vanessa Priya Danielle. Her book is called Unrig the Game, What Women of Color Can Teach Everyone About Winning. You were going to say something else about the Kamala Harris conversation we were having a moment ago.
Yeah, so I mean, to your question about is it possible to have that thin of a vote margin be caused by the fact that she was a woman of color, and I think although there were many different variables, I think absolutely, because another variable that we need to look at is the stubborn insistence of the Democratic Party of not investing as deeply as communities of color have been calling on it to for decades in the year-round grassroots organizing and engagement of voters in community in order to actually help get out the vote and engage voters. And when we look at the work of LaTosha Brown in Georgia, for example, that was so critical to you know, the 2020 election, when we look at these kinds of investments that have been critical, the continued refusal to make those investments has a real price. And the consultant class of young white men who continue to advise in this direction, it is a problem. I will, by the way, say that, part of what makes women of color MVPs is points on the board. And that we can, as bad as things are now, we can imagine how much worse they would be if we hadn't had 4 years to take a breath between Trump administrations. And that breath was brought to us by women of color, like Black women organizing in Georgia, Latinas and Native women in the Southwest, Muslim and Asian Pacific Islander women in states like Michigan. And, this approach of organizing is also core to the answer to your question about not essentializing identity, but getting to the qualities that we're talking about. The majority of the folks I interview in this book are frontline organizers. And it is very important to acknowledge that as progressives, our power does not come from money. It comes from people and the ability to organize a sustained and vibrant, powerful base of folks, regular folks at the grassroots for long enough to win systems change and to gain the power to govern. And that kind of methodology and approach to the work, having conversations with ordinary people, helping them gain the experience of using collective action and changing their material conditions is part of what we need to be investing in, and women of color have been leading the way in much of that work.
When we come forward in our remaining moments with Vanessa Priya Danielle discussing her new book, Unrig the Game, What Women of Color Can Teach Everyone About Winning. 2 questions I want to get out before I lose her at the top of the hour. For that matter, before this program wraps at the top of the hour. I want to go to the very beginning of this conversation when you laid out those 5 things that you hear all the time talking to women leaders. One is that they have to lead in crisis. And I want to just flip the frame. Why not lead in crisis? If you really want to prove your mettle, if you really want to prove how good you are, you want to be leading in crisis. So I want to just take your temperature on that, number one. And number 2, I am fascinated, and the book lays this out. I was saying to Vanessa, it is an abundance of riches in terms of all the people that she had a chance to talk to for this book, these women leaders. And I am curious as to how you think humanity might be different, how the world might be different if we, in fact, could unrig the game. We'll close with that when we come forward on Tavis Smiley.
Why does Tavis say when we come forward? Because he's not going back. And you don't have to go back either. Forward ever, backward never. More of Tavis Smiley when we come forward.
This is an ad by BetterHelp. Think about your mentors and idols, the people who inspire you the most. While it may look like they have all the answers, they don't. But they do know when to ask questions and seek the support they need. In a world that glorifies hyper-independence, it's easy to forget that we're all better with a support system. Therapy is a great way to find a consistent source of support in your life, so you can break free from the outdated belief that seeking help is a sign of weakness. BetterHelp has experienced therapists ready to help you with challenges ranging from anxiety and depression to relationships and stress. It's convenient, too. You can join a session with the click of a button, helping you fit therapy into your busy life. You can even send your therapist a message anytime something comes up. Build your support system with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/ABCRadio today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/ABCRadio.
If you're like me, 60 and retired, making ends meet, especially here at the supermarket and drugstore, is tough. I'm so blessed to have found BenefitsCheckup.org. It's a free and confidential website from the National Council on Aging that connected me to $1,200 a year in programs that help pay for food, medicine, utilities, and more. Maybe it can help you. BenefitsCheckup.org.
You know where you want to go in life, and City National Bank can help. City National knows the dedication it takes to build your vision for the future into a reality, and our team is here for you. We have a wide range of options to help, from personal savings accounts to interest-bearing money market savings accounts and more, all designed to help you get where you want to go. City National, here for every stage of the journey. Learn more at cnb.com. City National Bank is a subsidiary of Royal Bank of Canada, member FDIC.
Texting privacy policy and terms and conditions posted at textplan.us. Texting enrolls for recurring automated text marketing messages. Message and data rates may apply. Reply stop, opt out. Individual results may vary. Consult a doctor prior to use.
If you've struggled to lose weight in the past, this important message is for you because you could lose as much as 50 pounds or more with Zelfie. Zelfie makes it easy and affordable to get weight loss treatment 100% online. Zelfie providers can prescribe FDA-approved GLP-1 weight loss medications clinically shown to help people lose weight, like Wegovy, Zepbound, and others. Plus, help get the medication covered by insurance, so it's as little as $0 a month.
The doctors are super helpful, and the meds have been a game changer. It's the first program I've had success with.
Before Zelfie, I was unable to lose weight, even though I was eating healthy and exercising 6 days a week. Zelfie helped me not only lose weight, but I feel so much better.
Text GOAL to 200-300 to get started today with Zelfie and see if weight loss medications like Wegovy or Zepbound are right for you. Don't wait. Text now for a link to your exclusive offer. Text GOAL to 200-300. That's GOAL to 200-300. GOAL to 200-300.
Less monologue, more dialogue. Tavis Smiley continues right now.
It does indeed continue right now for the next 4.5 minutes with Vanessa Priya Danielle. Her book is called Unrig the Game, What Women of Color Can Teach Everyone About Winning. My question, why not want to lead in crisis?
Yeah.
You can prove yourself, right?
Yeah.
It's better for women. Better for women. Look what we can do.
Yeah. And we have been proving ourselves. I think women of color have led through every single major crisis in the history of this country. I think 2020 was a crisis. And if not for women of color, we wouldn't have created the narrow margin of victory to defeat Trump then. And so it's one thing to lead in a crisis, and it's another thing to actually get the credit for the leadership that you express in a crisis. And I think that if that credit had been fully given to folks who led in 2020, then we would be in a better position to lead now. It's also another thing to be invited to lead in a crisis and be given the resources to do so instead of being invited in to take the wheel and then have the resources and the support pulled from you and then to be attacked from all sides, as we discussed. So I think women of color are exactly who should be leading in the crisis that we're currently in. I think bringing the superpowers like boldness, which allow us to counteract this timidity that we're seeing, which is absolutely greasing the wheels for fascism. Being able to not throw communities under the bus, to stand with the most vulnerable communities that is absolutely key to the kind of solidarity that has been able to defeat fascism anywhere in the world. So this is the kind of leadership that we need in this moment. And I will say, you can look anywhere in the planet, and there are three groups whose eroded rights have always paved the way for fascism. One is women, one is LGBTQ people, and the other is oppressed racial and ethnic groups. Every single woman of color in this country is a member of at least two of those. And those of us who are queer, which is a lot of us in movement, are members of all three. So we are under very little illusion that the way through this is to put our heads down and follow directions. We are highly motivated to fight. And we are also not new to fighting this kind of threat, because what fascism essentially is it is that three-headed monster of the worst of America: white supremacy, patriarchy, and extractive capitalism on steroids. So it makes a whole lot of sense that women of color who have been fighting this same monster for our very survival for hundreds of years actually have something to teach America about how to fight.
And unrigging the game would result in what, you believe?
Well, if we were unrigging the game, and there's a whole lot of concrete things that everybody can do to unrig the game for women of color leaders, but it boils down to two things: really seeing and valuing the strategic superpowers that so many of these sisters are bringing, and then intervening to block what gets in their way. If you see someone coming for a woman of color leader behind the zero margin for error or the expectation of mother and mammy, it doesn't take a lot of people. Sometimes only one person speaking up in a room can shift the whole room. So understanding these things, making them a part of staff orientations, staff handbooks, the culture and education and inoculation that is given to everyone in organizations, so that we start to recognize and unrig these things, will just strengthen and supercharge our movements at a moment where we really need it.
The women that she talks to for this book, I say, are amongst the best this country's ever produced. Somebody once said that every race of people ought to be judged by the best they've been able to produce and not by the worst. She's talked to many of the best in cultures all across this country for this book, 45 to be exact. It's called Unrig the Game, What Women of Color Can Teach Everyone About Winning. Its author, I've been honored to have had as our guest in this hour, Vanessa Priya Danielle. Thank you, Vanessa, not just for this book, but for all of your work and your witness. And honor to have you on this program.
Thank you so much. It's been an honor and a pleasure.
My pleasure. Just like that, 3 hours gone. Back here tomorrow, Lord willing, to do it all over again. Until tomorrow, thanks for tuning in to Tavis Smiley. And as always, keep the faith.
KBLA 1580 Santa Monica.
I'm Bree Wood with